Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in just a minute, but if you'd like, while you're waiting, you can drop in the chat where you're tuning in from. Welcome, welcome. If you're just joining us, so just putting in the chat where they're tuning in from. Washington, D.C., welcome. Evansville, nice. Welcome, Cassandra.
Hi, Allie.
Hi there, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Silver Spring, hi, David. I'm tuning in from College Park, actually. I'm on campus today. It's a beautiful day to be on campus. Lovely. Okay, I'll give folks just another second if you want to let us know where you're tuning in from virtually. Mostly we got people in the DC, Maryland area.
Oh, literally Lanham.
Okay. All right. Well, feel free to still use the chat. We'll be using the chat a lot today while you're talking with Joy. But I am going to get us started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ellie Garrity. I'm the Director of Alumni Career Programs at your Alumni Association. We're so excited that you're able to join us for today's webinar, Navigating the Federal Hiring Process to Land the Job with Dr. Joi Brown. This webinar is presented in partnership with the Coaches Corner program, which is one of the Alumni Association's newest professional development resources available to all Terps. We have a lot of information to cover today, but we will take questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to submit questions using the chat function in your Zoom panel. This webinar is being recorded, so by participating, you acknowledge and consent to your image, likeness, or voice being recorded. Speaking of recording, a recording and slides from today's webinar will be available and shared with you following today's session. And you can also access our closed captioning feature by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Okay, so a little bit about our presenter today. Dr. Joi Brown is a UMD alum, class of 01. She's a career strategist, life coach, international best-selling author, empowerment speaker, and entrepreneur known as the Positive Energizer. Joi is the Chief Executive Officer of 3E Consulting, where she continues to educate, equip, and empower people through coaching, conversations, and workshops. Joi's impact and presence are felt by others through her expertise in career and entrepreneur development, conflict resolution, goal setting, health and wellness, leadership, and team development, and personal and professional branding. She has been part of 2 anthologies and is an Amazon International best-selling author for her book, Step into Leadership Greatness, Leadership is Not a Title. Joi has been featured in various magazines and articles such as Tap In, VIP Global, Women of Dignity, and she's been recognized as a top 20 business coach, top 25 most inspiring women, top 25 global influencers, and top 50 of unstoppable innovators. Dr. Joi, I am going to pass it off to you to get things started, and looking forward to today's session.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. So this will be an interactive, webinar today. It is a pleasure being with you today. As Allie, in my introduction, I am a proud alum of the University of Maryland, College Park, and it was there when I was in school as an intern. So that's where my federal career kind of started. I was an intern talking about career opportunities, and so seeds were even being planted at Maryland. And so I am excited to be with you all and through our session today, definitely want you to ask questions, put stuff in the chat, raise your hand, but I definitely want you to have some how-tos, how to navigate and land a federal job. And so again, it is a pleasure being with you all. For a show of hands, how many of you think about, is the federal hiring process confusing, overwhelming sometimes? It's like you apply for something, it goes into the black hole, no one knows about it. You're like, what happened? Is that kind of true? Can I see some emojis? Y'all got to talk to me today. You know, send me some emojis, put some yeses in the chat. I see some hands raised. Okay, yes. So today we are going to navigate through the process about the federal hiring process. I'm going to give you clarity about the process. So at the end of today's session, I want you to walk away with learning a little bit more about the federal hiring process than you realized that you knew. And you will get a copy of the slides as well. So our session, we're going to cover to learn to navigate that federal hiring process, learn how our majors and skill sets can lead us to a federal career, as well as talk about some of the differences between private sector and the federal government resume. And so our starting point is USA Jobs. If you've heard of USA Jobs, put a 1 in the chat. So USA Jobs is the starting point. I see some ones in the chat. So I want to start with, again, what USA Jobs is, how we are utilizing, and why it's important for federal employment. All right, I see some ones. So USA Jobs is the federal employment job posting site. It is where all federal agencies have a mandate to post federal opportunities that are open to the public, people who've never worked in the federal government, or those who have worked in the federal government for other different promotion opportunities to be reassigned to a different agency. Again, you can search for jobs if you're a veteran, if you're a student, you can create resumes through USA Jobs. You can find out great events that federal agencies are posting and having about wanting to find out more about it. It is truly your one-stop shop for federal opportunities and everything. And again, it's very important if you create your profile. So how many, by a show of hands or shoot me some emojis, have a USA Job profile? All right, I see some yeses. All right. If you want to throw a yes in the chat, that's helpful as well. So we want to make sure that you are creating a profile. If you had one in the past, we may need to reactivate and get it more activated today, because I'm going to talk about how we're going to utilize USA Jobs in order to do this, and how federal agencies are using, you know, those applicants who have made their resumes searchable in order to find talent, in order for you to be contacted for a hiring manager. So stay tuned. So again, through USA Jobs, there are definitely a variety of different career paths, or hiring paths as we call it. Again, open to the public. Those who've never worked for the federal government, there's some that is open just for federal employees, for veterans, for military spouses, for those who's in our National Guard, for students and recent graduates, for senior executive, those are senior executives within the federal government, for individuals with disability, you know, families overseas, Native Americans, Special Hiring Authority, Peace Corps, you name it, there's a hiring path for you. So, but today I want to focus on, again, those open to the public, and those of you who are still in school, those student and recent graduate opportunities. Hopefully you have some notes beside you that you can take some key notes. And again, you will be provided this slide deck. So one of the things is, again, that we talked about, making sure that you are creating your profile on USA Jobs. Through your profile, you're able to search for jobs. You can search for jobs based on keywords. You can search for jobs based on occupational series. You can search for jobs based on salary, for duty stations all over. So it's definitely a great way to kind of search for jobs. In addition, you could also review the job announcement. So we're going to actually walk through why it's important to review the job announcement. It also talks about, how do I prepare for my application in order to submit on USA Jobs, as well as you're able to submit an application through USA Jobs. Any questions so far about USA Jobs before we dive into it, if we have a quick question or something? All right, hearing that, I'm gonna keep going. So again, as I indicated before, USA Jobs has a great feature, which we call it resume mining. And that is where, if you create your profile, and that's create your account on USA Jobs, there's a box when you go in to set your profile to make your resume searchable. So we want to do that because why? Because hiring managers and federal agencies are going into this database because it's over 1 million applicants, job seekers who have created profiles. And so if you have made your resume searchable by clicking that button in your profile, I, as a hiring manager, could go in and do keyword searches. And how are we getting these keywords? Because they're in your resume. So that's why we're going to talk about resumes at the end. I could go in, and if your keywords match my keywords of what I'm looking for in my announcement or in my position, your name would come up. So we want to make sure that you know about this great tool that hiring managers or federal agencies are going in, and you don't even know it. We're going in, looking at your resume. We can contact you for an interview. We can contact you to invite you to a career fair. Again, especially if we have special hiring authority. So if you're a veteran, if you're Schedule A, if you're a student or recent graduate, it all depends on what hiring authority. We can contact you off of resume mining, which is on USA Jobs. But what? You have to make sure that your resume is searchable. And how do you do that? By establishing an account and in your profile, checking the box that you want to make sure that your resume is searchable. Yes, David says he's a person with a disability, has his Schedule A letter and use it every time. That's right, David. If you have your Schedule A letter, that should be a part of, your packet. And again, one thing about USA Jobs, you can upload your resume, you can upload your supporting documents. So documents such as your transcript, if you need to qualify based on education, should be in there. Any Schedule A letters, your DD-214, if you're a veteran, all of that can already be in your USA Jobs profile and everything. So thanks for sharing that. Again, once you're able to find, again, a position on USA Jobs, this is the key things of how to understand. So you found the position on USA Jobs. Again, in the job announcement, we want you to be mindful that there's a description of the vacancy that describes the grade, the salary, the key requirements, the application closing and opening dates, as well as if you have an announcement and it says that it's only open to the first 100 people or prior to the cutoff date, that means you want to apply sooner than later. Because oftentimes now, once that application or gets to that certain threshold, they close down the announcement. So don't wait to the end of the closing date. Go ahead and apply early, again, to make sure that you're counted in that number. There's duties and responsibilities in the job announcement, which describe what am I going to be doing if I'm getting hired? What are they looking for? That duties section is so key because that describes your tasks and your responsibility. The next section is the qualifications and evaluation, which is what do I need to know? What are they asking for? And talking about that specialized experience, which we're going to talk about, that ties into your resume. Does your resume speak to your qualifications? And so we're going to talk about that, as well as the benefits and other information. What benefits, if I work for the federal government, are offered? What are the flexibilities? Any veterans preference or non-competitive are all going to be in that benefits and other section. Are they doing remote work? Are they doing telework? All of that's going to be included in that announcement, as well as the how to apply. What's all required? Is it a cover sheet? Do I have to do a questionnaire? Is that part of the announcement? Do I need to submit anything else? So these are kind of the big areas in the job opportunity announcement that you want to make sure that you read. And I always say when you read it, print it out, highlight it, because we don't want you to miss some key information by thoroughly reading what's all required of it, especially if there's limits on pages and stuff like that. We want to make sure you are counted, then not counted. Again, this is a job opportunity announcement where we again talk about, this is again an HR specialist for the Army. Again, you can see the opening and closing dates, the salary, the grade, who is it open to. So this is like the first page of it, which we just talked about, which gives you kind of a high level overview. Then you breaks it down to the summary, which is the duties. Again, it says that this announcement will close at 11:59. On the date of receipt of the 200th application. So again, they have already told you that this announcement will close earlier or once it hits the 200 mark. And so we want to make sure that you are submitting your application in a timely manner. Then it goes on to what they are looking for. Again, they're looking for a highly qualified and motivated individual who will serve as an auditor, on our team. There's a nice little summary of it. Then it goes further into your roles and responsibility, what you will be doing. So in this position, this is an auditor. And so they're talking about, again, this person will conduct performance and audits, does research, evaluation, studies and trends, and identifying, audit and review findings, researching laws for the Controller General's decision, looking at regulatory. So I'm saying those, and again, all I'm reading from is right here. If on your resume as an HR specialist, if I do not see words as research, evaluation, studies, analysis, auditing, something that pertains to the job, I didn't have to question, are you really qualified? So that's why it's very key that you read the duties and responsibility, then look at your resume to make sure that your resume speaks to the position that you're applying for. So if you're an auditor and have done auditing, it should have some auditing language. If you're an HR and moving to another HR field, if you're a program analyst and do stuff with evaluation, if you're a researcher, if you're a writer, even if you're doing something with social media, and I'm hiring a marketing media person, and on your resume, you've mentioned nothing to me about marketing and strategy of how you've been able to create campaigns on social media, there's a disconnect. And remember, everybody's applying for this one position or these two positions. And again, as the HR specialist looking at your resume, because there is a live person looking at your resume. There's not, we have systems that do stuff, but we still look at your resume to make sure that you are indicating that you are qualified for the position based upon the qualifications, which is the next slide I'm going to show you. So again, the qualifications is important because that's how you qualify. And again, as you look at your resume, it needs to be without a shadow of a doubt how you qualify. I don't have time in the HR specialist because again, it's a lot of people that are applying to call every person to say, what did you mean by this? You have these acronyms. What does this mean? Because acronyms, you need to spell them out. So again, you want to be crystal clear that your resume speaks or targets the position that you're applying to. Just makes sense. If I'm looking for a cook, do I need to hire a painter if I'm looking for a cook? No, disconnect. Just think about, when you're doing something in your house and you're looking for a specialty, or when you go to the doctor, your foot hurts, you're going to your foot doctor, not the chiropractor or another doctor that doesn't meet the needs that you need. So think of that just like a job. You want to make sure that that on this specialized experience statement, which is up here, that talks about what you want the person to be doing. And in this example, it talks about the specialized experience that is not limited to assisting with the verification of reports against source accounts, performing routine technical accounting assignments, reconciling banking and other accounts, verifying cash receipts and distribution vouchers. And so somebody in the auditing world knows what that means. And so if I've done that, all of that should be able to speak, and that should be on my resume. So I'll stop right here in case there are questions. I see one in the chat from Louise. Does it make sense to use a more generic resume for a main one posting or a variety? So it all depends. I would say depends on your background. Again, my background is HR. And so my background, even though HR is a wide field, my background is recruiting and staffing. I'm not qualified for benefits. That's a disconnect. Nothing in my background, even though I've oversaw, benefits and stuff like that, but my background is not benefits. My background is not retirement. My background speaks to recruiting and classifications and hiring and working with managers on their recruitment strategy. So that's my background. So my resume speaks to that. And so I would say it all depends, making sure that your resume speaks to the positions you're applying to. So you can, if you're able to give like a one resume that speaks to all of that, but if you've done a little bit of banking and a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that, it's kind of just, it has to be written just clear and concise that we can clearly tell how you meet that specialized experience. A question, you could feel free to unmute yourself and everything. Yeah, so David says he gets frustrated, yes, because some jobs on USA Jobs does require you to build a resume. And so, yeah, so some, depending on certain positions, they ask you, you can't upload your resume, you must build it. But David, I will say, once you have your resume that's together, that's ready, take that and you could just copy and paste that into the build your resume. That's what I did. But I do know some positions do require that you have to use their resume builder. Yeah, so Nikita's been told that she's been told to cater your resume to each vacancy to use buzzword. Yes. So again, and we talk about those keywords. So again, as this auditing, we can look at here, just based on the specialized experience. I say specialized experience, highlight it because that's what they're going to be looking for to qualify, and go back to the duties. But again, all occupations and positions have keywords. They have words. But if you're an auditor, and you've done this and you're applying for a different audit, but you've mentioned nothing about auditing, disconnect. And so just like banking and finance, if you've done something with banking or a treasurer, there are always keywords that kind of tell you kind of what you've been doing, and that should all speak to your resume. So again, this is the how to apply section. And again, in most jobs back in the day, I don't know if y'all remember, back in the day, we used to do KSAs. Oh my gosh, that's what people want to apply. Yeah, see Pamela shaking her head, she know. Behind them KSAs, you would have to write paragraphs and just be like, what is this? What is this? That is definitely a deterrent. And again, we did try to streamline that process by having a questionnaire. So here's how the questionnaires work. Remember, you have your announcement, your resume is your first cut. As an HR specialist, I need to know that you are qualified based upon that qualification. If you're qualified based on education, submit your transcript if that's how you're qualified. If you're qualified based on experience, look at the specialized experience statement, and it'll outline specialized experience is defined as da-da-da-da-da. Make sure that's on your resume. That's the first cut. That's your first cut. Once you pass that, this is your second cut, is answering the questionnaire. So how many of us have looked at the questionnaire? I say print it out, and sometimes you can see the questionnaire even before you apply. Look at the questionnaire. Like, that's a tip. Look at the questionnaire. Look at the questions that's answered. And it's usually some kind of Likert scale. And here is an example, analyzing historical budget and financial data to assist in budget preparation. And it's a Likert scale. So A is, I've had no education, training, experience in performing this task. Okay, you just have it. B is, you've had some experience. C is, you've had some, but you've been closely supervised. D is, this is a regular part of my task. And E is like, you considered an expert. I will say, if you answer E on all of this because you just want to get referred, and your resume doesn't speak to that, or you get to the interview and you clearly are not an expert, that's all going to come out. So I tell people, again, truth, public trust, again, this is the federal government service. We do background checks. There's integrity, all of that. And so, but you don't want to be too modest either that, oh, I haven't done this. So look at, again, one thing about the federal government is we look at all experience, paid experience, non-paid experience, work experience, volunteerism. If you are a treasurer on your HOA board, or your sons and daughters, boys and girls club, or something that they've done, and you've done that for a long time and have the dates and how many hours, and you've done it over years, that could serve as qualifying experience depending on what the position you're applying for. So I always say, don't cut yourself short of your experience. So when you're looking at these questions, you have to really ask, have you done this before? Is this a part of your regular duties? Have you done this without supervision? Are you considered an expert? An expert is that you have trained others to doing it. And so you've been performing this task. So just kind of think about in that sense as well. Right. So David has a question about the responses. So yes. So again, if you are veterans, and again, we appreciate veterans for all they've done for our country. And so within the federal government, veterans have preference, and which means is depending on your questionnaire, veterans, if they're minimally qualified, depending on the category, they float to the top for veterans preference on, they float to the top of that category in categorical rating. So yeah, so veterans preference and any other special hiring authority, they do have their preference treatment. That's all about, vets. And again, it's moving forward. But again, you must be minimally qualified, period. So that's that first cut. You must be qualified for the position, period, in order to be even referred to the manager. And so this is what happens. This is the process. You know, again, after you submit your application, we found it on USA Job, we've submitted everything. You should receive a notification on your USA Jobs account. One thing I like about USA Job, even when you search for it, they have this, I think, a plus or a heart or some kind of star that it goes into your like favorites or something. And that's all the job that you're interested in applying to. And it kind of becomes your list. And so even when you apply for it, you can go back and say, hey, what's the status of this application? So you will get notified again of the status of your application. Agencies, once you apply for the job, review the eligibility and qualifications. So I said an HR specialist reviews your application to make sure that you're minimally qualified. And then we look at your questionnaire, which is that assessment. We're looking at the questionnaire to making sure that you are, if you say you're an expert, your resume speaks to that. Once that's all done, the manager is sent a list. And hopefully you've received a notification that, hey, you were eligible and your name has been referred to the hiring manager. That's what that means. Once that manager receives that list, a manager reviews the resumes, reviews the certificate list, and the manager can interview some, none, or all on that list. So that's why it's important that your resume really speaks to who you are, your skill sets, your expertise, and all that you can bring to this position. And so again, the manager then can select amongst the best candidate for that position, and you will then be notified once they make their final selection to be notified that somebody else was selected apart that process and everything. All right, so David says, got set up for a federal job interview tomorrow morning. All right, great job, David. So that is the process. So again, the steps to apply is, again, updating your resume with these keywords, updating your resume on USA Jobs, making it searchable, because again, federal agencies are going across USA Jobs, which is 1 million applicants looking for talent. I mean, we are hiring, you know, with the new, I work for the federal agency with the new bipartisan infrastructure bill sitting on lots of vacancies. I'm trying to find people for jobs. That was the one reason why I told Ali I wanted to do this, because I'm sitting on vacancies that I need to fill jobs. Doesn't help if we can't fill jobs. I need to fill vacancies and nobody's applying for them. And so I want to make sure that, and again, we're using resume mining. I brought that to my hiring managers about, hey, how you can use this. We're looking for student employment. We're going to be doing recruitment events. We're going to do virtual events, because again, we need to message that we're hiring, and we're hiring across a lot of different spaces.
Joy,
Yes.
got a question. Is there any, I am a woman of a certain age, shall we say. Is there any sort of, you know, is that an obstacle, I guess is my question.
For age, so the only, if for like law enforcement that I know, and like criminal investigators that have the retirement age, and you have to be a certain age in order to, you know, apply and stuff like that, because they do that early retirement. Anything in law enforcement, but no. And right now, again, one of the things, if you ever work for the federal government, we bring back retirees. So if you ever work for the federal government, we can bring you back, because again, we need to fill positions, and you may have that skill set on a temporary basis that we can bring you back to help offset, you know, us to fill a short need or a temporary assignment. And so again, there are full-time positions, 40 hours. There are term positions, which is, this is a special project, and it's a 1 year or 2 year or 3 year type of time period.
Joy, there was something in the chat a little bit earlier that got buried. I just wanted to bring back up,
Okay.
if that's okay. Maria was asking, when you were chatting about, you know, talking about your level of expertise on certain things, she was asking, or she said she was, excuse me, sorry. She was once informed that unless you answer expert on every questionnaire, your application won't be considered for positions. She was just saying, hoping that's not the case, but kind of wanted you to confirm.
Oh, no, so again, one of the things is, now there's always a cutoff score, but the cutoff score is not 100. Because think about it, if you answer our expert, then the cutoff score, everybody will get 100. And so there is a cutoff score. Some are like 80, some are 90. But the thing is, does your resume speak to you answering an expert? Because if it's not, some agencies, they change the score. Because if you clearly say you're an expert, but then that's not in your resume, that's a fabrication there, and that's a disconnect. Or when you have to do the interview and you get to the interview and you just clearly, because again, one of the things, you know, definitely with interviews, they're doing behavior based. So they're going to talk about, describe a time when you had to, what did you do and what was the action and what were the results? So again, That's wanted to make sure, but I know that's one of those myths of that, well, I'll just answer E's on everything and then I'll just be referred. You can, but then if it comes out that if your resume doesn't speak to that, or they can clearly tell that I'm just trying to figure out how do you do that, you may not be referred. So I would just be mindful, but be honest, but tell the truth. And don't be so like, oh, I haven't done any of this. When if you took a class, if you did. So again, you have to think about all in your life, how have you obtained these skills or this expertise? And I say, think about everything that you've done. So just like I said, I'm a leader at work, but I'm also a leader in my community. I've done stuff for, in my schools, I've done stuff for organizations. And so I pull all of that. It's qualification experience that I can utilize, and you can use it as a resume builder as well. Another question I see is, what are the top positions that you're currently looking for? Oh, we're looking for everything. And so I work for one of the federal agencies, from human resources to program specialists to budget to finance, to highway safety folks, it's the gamut. And it's a lot, because one of the things is the infrastructure bill just came to pass like last year. And so we are looking at, this is the first year. This is kind of a 5-year kind of deal thing. And I said, we're hiring now. So the next year I got to take it up to the next level, because I got to hire like 90 some people. That's just in year 2. So, and I'm just one federal agency that's a part of it. But oftentimes, like I said, looking for a job is a job within itself. But there are jobs out here. Even when I'm not looking, I always see jobs. But the question is, you have to continue to apply. And I know one thing about the federal government, it's a process. Continue to apply. But once you got your resume and your resume keeps getting hits about, you keep getting referred, because that's the key. You want your resume to do what it does, and you keep getting referred. Not, you're not, then you need to look at how you're answering. The question is, your resume really speaking with someone? And even offering, maybe somebody else needs to look at your resume, because it's about rewording stuff. So little did I know, when I was in Maryland, talking about careers and opportunities and doing my stuff at the Office of Personnel Management, which is where I started on doing resumes, that I would still be able to just, again, using my talents and still doing resumes today, still helping people, help them with their resume. I am a firm believer of walking in your gifts, and I am one that has done that. The skill sets I have is all a part of my gifts and talents, and I just been able to utilize this on my day-to-day job. So training and development, people, strategy, coming up with solutions, coming up with new programs and stuff like that. I'm able to just utilize that in a field that I've actually grown up in, and everything. And so my give back is this. That's what I enjoy. That's what birthed all my businesses about that. So great information, y'all, and everything. One thing I definitely want to mention is, again, in the federal government, we do backgrounds. And so again, so let me address this. So on the position, it will say, what is the background? So it's a background check. Oftentimes the jobs will tell you, you have to be eligible for it. Some jobs, depending on what agency, they may require you to have it, but most federal agencies, you don't have to walk in the door with a secret clearance. But if the job says it's a secret clearance, they're going to help you get to that secret clearance and everything. But there is a background. So one of the things is, again, just making sure that you are mindful of that, especially when I go into the college, the colleges and the high school students. Again, I need people to be clearable, because, I have a 24-year-old, they post everything on social media. As a hiring manager, I want to know who I'm hiring. So that's why we start having those conversations about, posting everything, making sure that you are clearable, stuff like that. And making sure that you're able to have a federal job. Again, there's the background check, there's a credit check. Again, we're not saying that if you owe debt and stuff like that, you're not going to work for a federal government employee. That's not it. But again, it's to be truthful. If they ask you to have to go back to say, I need you to talk about, who knew you here or what was in this circumstance, just tell the truth about the process. The worst thing you can do is lie, get a federal job, and then you're out totally. So we want to just be mindful of that and everything. Another document I'm going to give you that it was helpful is the federal career. So this is great for students, or just, again, like I like accounting or I like anthology, but what does it go to when I'm searching on USA Jobs? So this is actually just the first page. It's like an 11-page document that breaks down all the occupational series based upon major. So when we look at, okay, I went to school for this, because oftentimes people go to school for stuff that they're no longer doing, right? We've all know that, like, people went to school for this and they're not even doing anything they went to school for. But this sheet definitely can help you all even look at, okay, well, I like accounting, but it's a lot of different, you don't have to be an accountant. It's a lot of different stuff. You know, we need lawyers, you know, we need lawyers within the federal government versus, you know, lawyers could be for child, but maybe you want to be a lawyer within the federal government. So there's a lot of different occupation. Everything that's out here in the private sector, there's someone in the government. We have we call it the wage grade of those, you know, engineers and drivers and, you know, those on the trade side. We have a space for you also in the federal government. So there are definitely opportunities across the federal space for opportunities, and with new executive orders such as, you know, the Diversity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Act. There's definitely things that were coming that's going to revolutionize, you know, again, these undeserved populations that we're making sure that we're targeting, working with folks who may not have ever been able to get into the federal government. You know, there's new legislation coming out with people who've been incarcerated. You know, again, I just told you we have to do the background check. So think about that question we know is, have you ever been convicted of a felon? That's on there. But there's now, as we talk about where the world is going, being more inclusive, making sure that everybody has a seat at the table, that it's accessible to all. There is new legislation that will open up and revolutionize how we're hiring. I mean, just in the federal spaces, you know, we just came out of the pandemic. And so this new hybrid workforce, no time in the federal government have we been able to offer a federal job remotely. Someone who's been in HR, I'm about happy glad, because I'm just like, y'all don't even understand what that means. Because most time it was like, I need to see you. And I remember when I had to implement and roll out telework, you know, with manager, I need to see my employee. But again, the pandemic, we had to manage and lead and hire differently in a space that we were virtual. Now you have a space where jobs, no matter where you live, you can get hired in the federal government. That's huge. That's huge. That just creates a new market that I don't need. My talent may not be in Washington, D.C. My talent may be in, you know, Florida, if that's where my skill set is. And so there will be opportunities for federal agencies to, you know, get this great talent and be able to compete and everything. Any questions for me right now before we're going to transition into resumes? But I want to say, any questions right now for me? And feel free to unmute yourself. So one question I have is, what is the best method to search for jobs relevant to your skill sets in a higher education or student affairs? So one of the things is on, again, on this chart, depending on, you know, student affairs, what do you want to do with it? Is a question. So maybe a conversation. I am going to share my information. Anybody that attends today definitely can follow up with me, because I am offering like a free, just exploratory conversation about, you know, the next steps for you. And then we can definitely talk about, but I always would ask people, you know, what do you want to do? I usually start people like, what do you want to do? So if you want to work with students and you want to work in higher education and, you know, you want to just make a difference, what do you want to do? Then I can definitely help you align that with an opportunity if you're interested in the federal government, or even making sure that your resume speaks to that, because it's definitely a lot of different occupations. I mean, think about as a professor, there's training and developments in the federal government. Who comes up with all the training and development? Who comes up with all, you know, the new programs and stuff like that? People need to be trained. So there's definitely a learning and development space if you wanted to transition, say, from an instructor to someone to be able to help with that. Someone's got to put all that together. So just great information to do. But there is definitely skill sets that we definitely need. And so definitely want to transition to about resumes, because this is important. There is a difference between the private sector resume and the federal government resume. And I definitely want you to make sure that you know. And how are we using resume? You know, resumes can be used to apply for positions, you know, leadership and development programs, contracts, because again, one thing about the federal government, contracts, we need vendors to do stuff. So one of the things as part of that procurement process and that acquisition process is we need to see what's the skill sets of others. So we're always getting a resume of that person. Now, how many of you all, by show of hands, or you can put it in the chat, have a federal resume? So you can give me some emojis or put a yes. Okay, I see some hands up. All right, good. So yeah. So the next slide is, that's good to know. So here's some brief differences of what, between private sector and a federal. So one thing, the private sector is usually resumes are written to get the interview. They're very short and specific. That 1 to 2 pages, y'all don't deviate, 1 to 2. We're like, woo. They're again, now we're moving towards more electronic, but back in the day, it used to be hard copy. We used to submit cover letters with it. The manager reads the resume, interviews, and hires, and it's really quick days to hire. One thing about the federal government is our resumes are written to get what? The position. So that's why looking at your resume, make sure it's tailored to the position is important. It's detailed and it's job specific. And I will add to this, not only is it detailed and job specific, but it needs to highlight results. It needs to highlight why, if I want to hire Pamela, what skill sets from Pamela's background and what has Pamela done in the past that it could be an indicator to me that she can do it on this job. So if Pamela was a teacher, but she was a teacher and she was able to increase test scores from 25% to 80% over her 3-year time frame, I want to see that on her resume as someone who's been able to get some results. So again, it needs to be specific and job related, but also speak to your results. Again, resumes are computer read and they are scored. So that's that whole scoring with the questionnaire. And again, the hiring managers pick from the list of best qualified. Now we know our process is not as quick as the private sector, but we're working on it. We're working on the time to hire. And one thing about that, our page limit is, I would say keep your resumes within 5 pages. And the reason why I say 5 is because in order to be a senior executive within the federal government, which is the highest position in the federal government, it's 5 pages. So if my big boss has a 5-page resume, why would I have a 10-page resume? 5 pages. And also when we look at, and then another question is, now remember, I've been working for 20 some years. Oh my God, how am I gonna put everything in this 5-page resume? You want to look at those positions that is relevant to the position that you're applying to and try to keep it within 10 years. Now, not to say that my 10 years when I first started at OPM is that experience that didn't help me, but really my last kind of 10 years, what I've been doing is helping me get to my next job. Because think about it, right? Every job that I've had should prepare you to the next job. And every job, something that you're walking away with learning, that's going to help you to apply to your next position. So really try to tailor your resume so it really reflects those current positions or those positions that you've had that demonstrate all that you want to bring to this organization and why that you're the right person for this position. Again, one thing about your federal resume, your name, your address, your contact information, if your citizenship, your veteran's preference. Again, if you've ever been a federal government, you should put that information on there. For education, you can, again, your high school, your college. Again, this is definitely for my recent graduates and students who are in school. Definitely put, what schools you went to, how many earned credits do you have? Because one of the things about the recent graduates is you can apply for a position 9 months prior to your graduation date. So all my graduating seniors that's graduating in May and right now, 9 months prior to today, they should have been applying for jobs. But oftentimes people don't know that. They wait till they get out. No. 9 months prior that I need you to know, because all it has to be is by the time you start, I need you to have graduated, you have got your degree or made that GPA. So those are the things. So we want to make sure that, as a student, that your resume speaks to, all the classes that you've done, the attempted credits, even if you went back to got a certification, you want to put that all on your resume to do that. Again, as we indicated before, you want to customize. I see I'm gonna go to this slide, then I'll open the floor for some questions. You want to make sure that you customize your resume for each position. Again, modifying the application for the position that you're applying to if it's needed. Avoid the facts. Be concise to the point, but also speaks to the job that you're applying to. You can use headers as an easy guide to read. Also, to me, bullets are easy to read than paragraphs, because paragraphs is it's just a lot. So think about it, if as an HR specialist, I'm reading hundreds of applications, paragraphs, I'm like, oh my gosh, versus I'm looking for keywords. And so I can scroll down a resume really fast over the beginning sentences of how you start your duties and responsibility with those keywords. So bullets are just quick ways, or headers. You can do headers. So as HR consultant, as a strategist, whatever the headers are in your background, as a program manager, as a program analyst, as an analyst, as a researcher, you can use headers. Yes, I see your hand.
Hi, Joy. Question. So I understand you say make your resume searchable. Is this only searchable through hiring managers, or who's able to access your information? And then are you able to tell who searched it?
Okay, great question. So it's through USA Jobs. And so who has access to USA Jobs is managers, your HR specialists, and recruiters, because those are the ones who are looking for talent. And so for instance, again, you will not know if they're looking for you. Like you won't know if like I go in and I'm looking for like a program analyst, and I can look up like program manager, program analyst, work analysis, and your resume will pop up. You won't know that I've looked for you. There's no tickler within USA Job, but you may know if I contact you, says, hey, I found your resume on Resume Mining and through USA Jobs, the resume talent portal. We're having this hiring event next week. Would love for you to come. Or here's this announcement that is about to come out. Feel free to apply. So that's how we're able to utilize that. And that's how federal agencies are strongly encouraged to utilize the system and everything.
Okay, thank you.
But like I said, it's a great way, once you make sure your resume is searchable, for someone to find you. When I know that you're finding them by you applying for jobs, but it's another way that we're looking for just talent within house. Other questions? All right. So again, some other resume tips: be thorough, detailed. Again, with your qualifications and accomplishment, use past tense. Again, I just know to call it anything I've done in the past is past tense. Anything I'm doing currently is my current present tense. Again, you want to use relevant words, description, and phrases from your job announcements, duties, and even the job classification. Again, Google is my best friend. So again, oftentimes when working with clients, I go see, okay, now you told me this, because on your resume, if you're like me, your job description, you're doing so much more, right? We do know that. They can't put everything, but you're doing so much more. And so unless you are really savvy enough to talk about all the great work from like performance evaluation or just what you've done, you're missing some of your key deliverables and your accomplishment. That's what we want to capture. We want to capture your whole person, all the things that you do and what you bring to this organization. And you want to quantify stuff. If you said you oversee a budget, now overseeing a budget of $20 versus overseeing a budget of $200,000 is a difference, right? If I say I have briefed, 50 people versus I've briefed 500, even though it's the same thing, but the level and the complexity changes when you add numbers and quantifiers. So again, anytime that you can use percentages, you can use numbers, you can use impact, like under your leadership, you improve the process and it went from this to that, or something was developed and this helped streamline a process and did a process improvement. You want to highlight all that information. And again, we always say, feel free to use headers in your resume as well. So here's some resume pitfalls. Again, don't just state the duties. Don't just take the duties from your PD or whatever your job posting that you find and just pop it in your resume. No, let's not do that. Again, it needs to speak to what you've done. Don't just attach the position description to your experience. No, talk about what you've done. Because oftentimes that position description is not telling everything that you've done. And again, don't assume that the HR specialist knows what you're talking about. Spell out your acronyms. Because one acronym in one organization may be a total different acronym in another organization and mean totally different things. So you want to spell those out. But it's great to get somebody to look at your resume if you're able to. As part of that, look at some of these keywords that's out there. You can Google like keyword search and start with action words. Develop, create, analyze, evaluate, implement, collaborate, engage, create partnerships, stuff like that. So, but look at, again, your starting point is that job opportunity. Now it's about reading that and then determining what's in there and what you're going to be doing and everything. So what questions do you have for me? Because I know some of y'all were putting this stuff in the chat, but feel free to unmute yourself because this is your time. Is there any websites that do federal resume reviews? I don't know of any resumes or any federal websites that necessarily do that. But again, one of the things is, again, as part of our career coaching alumni association that we are offering, that I'm just one of the many coaches, or we are offering, for our Terps alums, anybody who attends our workshop, a discount for services that you may need. And so on my last slide, I definitely have, this is our career coaching network. But on the last slide, I'm definitely available to schedule, a free career discovery call or discount on career services, because I do definitely resume reviews to help you just want to strategize. Enjoy. I'm trying to just change careers. I'm trying to get back out there. So I would definitely, or just have a free conversation, pick my brain for 30 minutes and give you some great tips and tools. So I definitely want to put my information out there and everything. Other questions? Okay,
Hi, Joy.
Yes, Marta. Mhm.
I am a former DC employee, and I find that finding what grade level doesn't translate.
Mhm.
So how can I know what position, what grade level I should be applying for?
That's a great question. I was just looking at your question now. So that's a great. So in the vacancy announcement, under the qualification statement, there is, some grades. And so one of the things you will have to determine which grade that you apply to. So one of the things is like a bachelor's degree gives you a GS5. So if you just have a degree, that's a GS5 or a GS7. A master's degree automatically qualifies you for a GS9. A PhD qualifies you for a grade 11. The higher you go within the federal government, now some jobs, now that's education, but the higher you go, education may not apply. So it's based on your experience. So even though these lower bands, like lower grade, like the 5, 7, 9, you can still qualify based on your experience. So there's an education experience or there's an experience. So it's education or experience. You have to determine kind of where you would fall. Now, if you've been working for, 5+ years in this field, depending on, looking at, you could start at the 11 or maybe the 12. And so our grades go from GS1 all the way to GS15. So GS15s are like managers, and then you have the executives. But, definitely around in the Washington, D.C. area, 13, most jobs, the full performance level is a 13. 14s are like team leads or supervisor, and you can get some supervisors at the 14. But great question. But I would just say, look at those jobs to see, again, based on your skill sets. And without looking at your resume, I could probably tell, well, based on your experience, you should start here. And everything. But feel free, if you want to reach out to me, and then we can kind of look at your resume. I can give you that. But you have to make that determination depending on your expertise and what you bring. You tell us what you qualify for based upon what's in the announcement. Yes, another question I see.
Yes, can you please tell me the name of your books? I think they were mentioned earlier.
Oh, okay, yeah, so one is actually Steps into Leadership Grading. If you go to my website at 3EE Consultant, they're actually on there.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. Other questions? So David had a question about how often are agencies using the automatic to scan resume. It all depends, David, because again, depending on what their hiring needs are. But again, jobs are posted daily. And people, as part of the application process, that is that resume piece that they submit, and then that questionnaire piece. And then again, after that closes, a HR specialist has to go in to review all those resumes to make sure that the person said they was qualified, but I still got to look at it to determine their qualifications to make sure they are minimally qualified. Once that list is done, then it goes to the hiring manager for them to review the list and to start scheduling for some interviews and everything. But I know I have been personally working with OPM, actually, started there, but even since then, I've been partnering with them, especially getting the word out about, resume mining. I brought it to my new organization where I'm at now, because it's just a great tool that when we looking for talent, I need us to look for talent everywhere. I mean, we're gonna post it, but we also gonna share, because oftentimes you hear about positions based upon, who's hiring. And if we don't tell people that we're hiring, we're gonna miss the mark. So that's one of the things I plan to be doing in this new role, is about elevating our brand I want us everywhere. Just like those golden arches, I want my agency everywhere. That's what I tell my managers so they get it. I'm like, yeah, y'all know what those golden arches mean. Y'all know that's McDonald's. Every time you see our brand, I need to know that we're hiring. Any other questions? Any other
You know what, I'm
questions?
just gonna do this verbally rather than typing everything out. So, position I find myself in is, I'm a postdoc. I've got a PhD in mechanical engineering. I've got postdoc funding that I've been using to explore productizing a technology I patented while I was at the University of Maryland. Conclusion I'm coming to is that this might not be the best time to jump into the entrepreneurial space, and I'd like to bring the skills I've developed there to either government or industry.
Mhm.
Problem is that there's areas where my knowledge is a mile deep, and there's a lot of other areas where it's a mile wide and an inch thick. For example, I can say I've managed 3 different contractors because I did during this process, but that's not necessarily the level that's going to be asked for at some of the higher end jobs. At the same time, at a lot of the lower end jobs, either there's no postings listed on USA Jobs, or I'm so overqualified that I get laughed right out of the
Mhm. Yeah,
system
so it's
for
kind of
you.
got to find your niche, right? Especially in engineering. That's one of the things, like in my organization, you know, we're doing great stuff with electrical engineers. And so I know that students in these engineering programs have no clue about where I work and what do I do, but we need your talent. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing more of hitting the ground, is making sure that there's a connection. So like you said, that major, I have an engineering degree. What can I do within the federal space with your engineering degree? My economist, my, you know, all these STEM, there's big push within STEM within the federal government, even diversity within women in these areas. But one of the things that I would say, Louis, is just keep looking. And maybe it's like you know, if you want to schedule a meeting, we can kind of look at kind of what areas you need to target going to kind of help you with that. Because like I said, some positions you're gonna be overqualified and some you don't even see the lower. So we need to find that medium to figure out what skill sets you have and how you can apply that in the federal space, especially if you've done contracts. You know, contract specialist is one of those ones that if you've ever been you know, that COTAR stuff, you know, the government always does a lot of work with contracts and managing of those contracts. Program manager is always a great field that, you know, the PMs, because again, in the federal government, we manage people, programs, and projects.
I guess the
And
question
now
is
that
how
you
to
have this
translate
great
kind of the
PM
small,
space,
small
right.
scale stuff, because I can say, you know, ran a budget of 150K and had 3 contractors working under me, but that's not quite the same thing as a PM on a,
Right,
you
but
know,
we
$2
need to
million
look at what you
project.
did, those skill sets, because it's how you're writing that skill sets and what you bring. Because you manage contracts and you manage, you know, the contracts and the budget, but there's skills with doing that. And so it's outlining that on your resume and matching up to skills that you can apply for. But budget is always one, because the people in budget, they're in 3 different fiscal years every year. I mean, that's the one job you're in past, you're in FY 22 now, 23, and looking at 24 and all at the same time. I mean, you got to be really skillful in doing that as a budget person.
Yeah. Thanks.
No problem. Any other questions for me?
So it looks like we have one more that came in.
Okay.
If from Nikita, if you get the interview but not the job, is it okay to reach out to the manager? I think Maria added her thoughts here too, but would love yours.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you don't get the job, I always, even like, again, after you interview, you should hit that what thank you note right on back. And then if they come back and say somebody else, like, always ask for feedback. And so definitely, I think that's just a helpful tip as well. And I would say like another session we can do is on brand. Branding is important. See, to me, your resume starts your brand. It got to speak to everything that you bring to this organization. And then when you have the interview, you got to bring it. You got to nail it. And then, you know, I have my little tagline. So again, like, why do you want to work for our company? What are you bringing? And again, that closing, thank you. It's powerful because that's what their last remark they're going to remember you by. But that's all about, because again, you're the best person to talk about you. But I also know that's also a struggle for some folks. Just talk about, you know, how their skill sets, and see, partnering up with coaches such as myself and others will be able to help give you that confidence that you're going to nail it. I mean, I'm trying to turn some people into like success stories. Like, yes, y'all got this. You've been doing it. So we got to work on those strategies that will help you give you your elevator speech. So at the drop of a hat, you'll be able to do your intro and everything. Any other questions for me? And feel free, if you ask the question, I didn't get a chance to respond due to time, just reach back out to me, and definitely I offer myself, and hopefully I'll be, looking forward to meeting some of you all with our free career discovery call. It'd be great to pick somebody's brain. That's what I'm here for. And to help you land your dream job.
Well, Dr. Brown, this was awesome. I think a lot of people are putting in the chat just how thankful they are for this insider knowledge that you shared, and your enthusiasm throughout the whole thing. So I will send a follow-up email that has all the information, the PowerPoint, the recording, how you can reach Dr. Brown, more about our Coaches Corner program. So we'll package that up nicely and send it to all of you to take a look at. And I encourage you to reach out to Joi and connect with her, because she is so knowledgeable, and we're so grateful for your time. So if we could give just a virtual round of applause for her, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for your time today. And I hope
Yes, thank you.
No
Yes.
problem. No problem.
Well, and we're so glad you could join us. And look, David's putting up a
I
little
love
heart
it,
emoji. Well, thanks again, everyone. And we'll see you at the next Coaches Corner webinar that we have. Stay tuned to learn more about what that topic will be. So again, Dr. Brown, thank you so much. And thanks to all the Terps who joined us. So go Terps. We'll see you next time.